American romantic thriller drama film, The Bodyguard, was theatrically released by Warner Bros. Pictures on November 25, 1992. The 2-hour and 9-minute film is rated R, directed by Mick Jackson, written by Lawrence Kasdan, and stars two of the biggest names in film and music at the time, Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston. Former United States Secret Service agent Frank Farmer, played by Kevin, switches gears to become a bodyguard, who is then hired to protect famous singer and actress Rachel Marron, played by Whitney, from an unknown stalker who's sending her death threats. The cast also includes Bill Cobbs as Rachel's manager, Bill Devaney, Gary Kemp as Rachel's publicist, Cy Spector, Mike Starr as Rachel's original bodyguard, Tony Scapelli, Michelle Lamar Richards as Rachel's sister, Nikki Marron, Devon Nixon as Rachel's son, Fletcher Marron, Tomas Arana as fellow former Secret Service agent turned bodyguard turned hired hitman, Greg Portman, Ralph Waite as Frank's father, Herb Farmer, as well as Christopher Bird as the cocky black chauffeur, Henry Adams. The script actually sat in limbo for nearly 2 decades after Lawrence wrote it in the mid-70s. He was a copywriter who wanted to get into filmmaking, so he wrote and wrote and wrote, including The Bodyguard, which he says was inspired by the 1961 Japanese samurai film Yojimbo, Bodyguard in Japanese, and was the first one he wrote that was actually good. He wrote it with Steve McQueen in mind for the lead. The script finally landed him an agent, but was rejected 67 times before being accepted and then forgotten about. While it was on the shelf, Steve McQueen was replaced by Ryan O'Neal. He was in a serious relationship with Diana Ross at the time, so she was thought to be the perfect person to play opposite him. In the end, though, she turned down the project reportedly because the script required a nude scene. The script was again left to gather dust, until a then little-known actor named Kevin Costner read it. According to Lawrence, Kevin loved the story right away. Although there wasn't much he could do with it at first, a couple of years later, he became Kevin Costner, bona fide movie star, thanks to Dances with Wolves and a slew of other late 80s, early 90s blockbusters. Now he could use some of his newfound Hollywood power to push The Bodyguard into production. Also at this time, Whitney was as famous in pop music as Kevin was in movies. In 1985, her self-titled debut album topped the Billboard 200, and she became the first female performer to have 3 #1 Billboard Hot 100 singles from one album. Kevin admitted that he was initially drawn to Whitney for superficial reasons. He told CBS, "I saw her like every red-blooded male would see her. I thought she was really pretty." Aside from that, he quickly became convinced that no one else could play Rachel, to the point that he was willing to wait a year for her to accept the role. First, he had to convince her to take the part. While Whitney was a successful pop star, she had also considered acting. But as she explained to Rolling Stone in 1993, her plan was to start out with small roles and slowly progress. Since she'd achieved a certain level of fame already, she was well aware of the scrutiny and schadenfreude that comes with being in the spotlight. "You know what I was concerned about? That people would dog me before they gave me the opportunity to do the job. Making the transition from a singer to an actress made me apprehensive. Like, can I really do this?" Even after reading the script, she was still unsure. She continued to delay accepting the part until Kevin called and promised that he wouldn't let her make a fool of herself. At that moment, she finally agreed to do it. Despite Kevin's faith that Whitney was the right woman for the role of Rachel, some people behind the scenes took issue with one particular aspect of her casting. Kevin made mention of it in a 2014 interview with Yahoo. "Everybody alerted me to the fact that she was black, which I knew. It wasn't only that Whitney was black. While there was no mention of race in the screenplay, The Bodyguard centered on an interracial romance between a black woman and a white man, a concept that was considered controversial by certain people in 1992. Both Whitney and Lawrence insisted that detail about the characters wasn't relevant. During the movie's production, Kevin refused to pander to those who worried that the pairing would cause a scandal. He also flatly refused requests to add a scene to explain their differences. Although The Bodyguard has one of the most famous kisses in movie history, and one of the most famous love songs, the romantic scenes are actually pretty tame. There's the kiss after Frank cuts Rachel's silk scarf in half with his samurai sword, a kiss in the dark outside of her home the night before the Oscars, and that ultra-romantic farewell kiss on the runway at the end. Part of the reason for the chaste representation was Whitney's refusal to appear nude. The pair did film additional love scenes, but they ended up on the cutting room floor. Whitney, though, said if those scenes had been used, she would have been okay with them because she felt they were tastefully done. Rumor has it that her fiancé at the time, the king of R&B, Bobby Brown, didn't like seeing his girl getting so cozy with her leading man.
You better lay low.
One unfortunate experience that sometimes happens while filming movies is accidents. For Frank and Rachel's goodbye kiss, the camera was set up to run on a dolly rail that followed her as she ran towards him, then circled the pair as they kissed. In the first take, the camera operator was thrown from the platform, but the camera continued rolling, in both senses of the word. Fortunately, the operator wasn't seriously hurt and managed to catch up to the camera and finish the shot. In an interview for the DVD, the director said he used that first take in the movie. So, the next time you watch the film, spare a thought for that dutiful camera operator. Another incident, sadly, cost a crew member his life. In January 1992, a grip truck driver was crushed between two lighting equipment cranes that crashed into each other. He died shortly after being rushed to the hospital. Warner Brothers investigated the accident, and a lawsuit filed against the equipment manufacturers was settled for an undisclosed amount 2 years later. Whitney performed several songs for the film's record-breaking soundtrack, but the breakout number was undoubtedly her cover of Dolly Parton's I Will Always Love You. But it almost didn't make it into the film. Originally, she was going to sing Jimmy Ruffin's What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted, but while The Bodyguard was still in production, Paul Young entered the Billboard charts with a cover recorded for the 1991 dramedy film Fried Green Tomatoes. Now they had to scramble for a replacement. That's when I Will Always Love You was suggested. Kevin and music producer David Foster immediately knew it was perfect. While Whitney hadn't been keen on Broken Hearted, her face lit up when she heard David's arrangement of I Will Always Love You. Kevin and David, though, had one creative disagreement. Kevin insisted on the a cappella opening, which David initially balked at, but later admitted was the right call. Whitney actually contributed much more than her incredible voice. Not only did she sing half a dozen songs, but she was also an executive producer who wrangled collaborators and defined the movie's sound. She asked music mogul L.A. Reid and singer Kenneth Edmonds, better known as Babyface, to write Queen of the Night, and ended up helping them finish the song. She asked gospel singer and friend B.B. Winans to create a longer version of Jesus Loves Me for the soundtrack, and made sure Warner Brothers included it. She also chose to cover Chaka Khan's I'm Every Woman, which can be heard ever so faintly playing in the limo on Rachel's ride home from brunch. Whitney's and her collaborators' musical intuitions paid off. The Bodyguard original soundtrack album earned her 3 trophies at the 36th Annual Grammy Awards for Album of the Year, Record of the Year for I Will Always Love You, and Best Female Vocal Pop Performance, also for I Will Always Love You. I Have Nothing and Run to You received nominations for the Academy Award for Best Original Song. The soundtrack features 5 songs in total which were hit singles for Whitney: I Will Always Love You, I'm Every Woman, I Have Nothing, Run to You, and Queen of the Night. Now here are some more fun facts about The Bodyguard. The film's poster showing Kevin's Frank carrying Whitney's Rachel out of LA nightclub The Mayan, where the singer had been mobbed by an overzealous crowd, not only signifies the peak of 90s movie marketing, complete with rain and grayscale, but had a lot more going on than people realize. 1, it's become especially memorable for incorporating Whitney's most iconic outfit in a movie. 2, it managed to cause controversy over some believing the studio deliberately hid Whitney's face in an effort to downplay Frank and Rachel's interracial romance. However, according to Kevin, the studio actually wanted more of Whitney showing, since she was supposed to be a big draw. He said that the shot where her head is buried in his shoulder was his idea. And 3, years later, Kevin revealed that the woman he's carrying is not Whitney. She'd already gone home for the day, so they used her body double. Whitney didn't behave like a diva at all on set. She hung out with the crew instead of scurrying off to her trailer, and even broke out into song at times behind the scenes. Director Mick Jackson told Whitney not to take acting lessons. A few weeks before shooting began, she asked him if she should. He told her that's the last thing she should do. He wanted her performance to be natural. She did as she was told and did not learn how to act. The mansion that Rachel Marin lives in is the same mansion used in the 1972 crime film The Godfather. 8-year-old Devon Nixon, who played Rachel's son Fletcher, had a special bond with Whitney on set. He said she would look over him like he was her own child, sing hymns, talk about the Bible, and educated him on just about everything. Gary Kemp, who played Rachel's publicist, Cy Spector, was also a member of 80s British band Spandau Ballet. He's also the one who wrote their 1983 #1 hit, True. In the bedroom scene in Miami, Whitney told Tomas Arana, who played Greg Portman, that she was too nervous and didn't want to kiss on the lips. That's why, in the scene, he's only kissing her neck. Whitney and Bobby were actively trying to have children even before they married in July 1992. Sadly, during filming of the movie, she suffered a miscarriage and took a break from the set for a few weeks. Fortunately, the couple got pregnant shortly after, and their daughter, Bobby Christina, was born in 1993. David Foster has a small role as the Oscars conductor.
He's got a gun! He's got a gun!
His wife at the time, Linda Thompson, was also caught on film for a brief moment. Actress and singer Debbie Reynolds has a one-liner in the movie too.
I always said she was nuts.
During the Oscars, one of Rachel's fans in the crowd outside the venue is holding a sign with her name on it. Unfortunately, they spelled it wrong. They added an extra A.
Yes, Rachel!
Yojimbo, the 1961 Japanese movie that inspired writer Lawrence Kasdan to write the Bodyguard script, is the same movie that Rachel and Frank go to watch on their date, which is his favorite. While audiences loved the movie, critics panned it. Entertainment Weekly gave it a grade of D, and at the 13th Golden Raspberry Awards, it received 7 nominations, including for Worst Picture, Worst Actor for Kevin, and Worst Actress for Whitney. Whitney's recording of I Will Always Love You isn't the only version of the song featured in the film. In a scene where she dances with Kevin, a version by John Doe can be heard playing on a jukebox. To this day, the Bodyguard original soundtrack album is the best-selling soundtrack album of all time, with sales of over 45 million copies worldwide, as well as the best-selling album by a female artist of all time. In the United States and Canada, the film grossed nearly $17 million in its opening weekend, ranking 3rd. It spent 10 weeks in the top 10, ultimately grossing nearly $122 million domestically. Its international gross was a record for Warner Bros. At $411 million and became the second highest grossing film of the year, superseded only by Aladdin. In 2022, The Bodyguard celebrated its 30th anniversary.